Hello and welcome to the sewing studio. Today I'm going to demonstrate for you how to make the blocks in this gorgeous quilt behind me, and this quilt's called Lime and Soda, and it's very kindly been loaned to us by Pam and Nicky Lintott. And the full instructions for the quilt are in this book. And it's really easy when it's broken down, as they've broken it down in their pattern, so you've got lots of pictures to follow. I'm quite visual, so for me it was really good when it came to putting all the blocks together. So the quilt measures 62 by 62 and it contains 16 blocks. So the blocks are like this here, and it's made of 2 blocks. So I've used the orange, where Pam and Nicky have used that lovely limey green. And then I've gone for a creamy colour where they've used the white. Now, I've gone for a creamy colour just for the purpose of today's demonstration. Ordinarily, I might have gone for a pale grey because I think that would work really well. But I can show you with complete contrast this way. So the jelly roll that I've used today is called Moda's Rustic Gatherings. And I think this works really well because it's got lots of greys, whites, blacks. And what you do need is you need a jelly roll that has got quite a lot of contrast. So we're going to get started. I'm going to open the book and I'm going to show you. This is what I mean about all these lovely visuals about putting it together. And it does look quite complicated when you look at that block, but it's been broken down beautifully for you in the book. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to sort your jelly roll, and I've already sorted mine, but you're going to sort your jelly roll into strips where you've got, so I've got a dark strip here and a light strip here. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put your 2 strips together and you're going to cut those into 3 lengths of 14 inches. So I'm just going to leave them together. If you're sort of fairly confident cutter, you can do this. So I'm just leaving them together for a minute and then I'm going to cut 3 lengths of 14. So the first thing I'm going to do is just going to nip off the selvage edge. And I do like some of these selvage edges. I can just see 2 little words there and it says greatest asset. I'm going to have to go and look at the bolt of fabric now to see what the full saying is on the selvage. Might just keep those. Right, so 14 inches. So I've got these folded in half. So I'm actually going to make that cut. And there we've got 4 of them cut. And then I'll just open this out to get my other 14 inches from this. And this has got a little bit of a fold. Now, some of you might want to press that out. I don't, because I don't like stretching the fabric too much. And with these strips, they can easily stretch. So 14. So there's my strips. And what you're going to do with this is you're going to sew a dark to a light and then a dark on that side. And then you're going to sew a light to a dark and a light on that side. So we're just going to go over to the sewing machine now and we're going to sew all of those together. Okay, so I have sewn these together like this, and I'm now going to go to the iron to press them. And the important thing with this is that we press our fabric towards the dark side, because when we make our checkerboard for the centre, we need our pieces to join up nice and neat so we can butt our seams together. So I'm just going to the iron to do this, and what we're going to do is we're going to set our seam, and that means press along the line that we've just stitched. And this is quite important when you're using thin strips like this, because your fabric does move. If you just go and press it straight away without setting it, sometimes you get a bit of a wibble or it stretches. So there you can see that I've pressed it towards the dark fabric, and I'm going to do the same with the other one. And then the next thing we're going to do, I'm just going to check my instructions, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut these into 2.5-inch strips. So if you're confident, you can put them together and you can cut them together, or alternatively, you might want to cut yours separately. So I'm just going to tidy up this edge here. Line them up nicely, and then I'm going to cut 2.5 inches. And you're going to do that with all of your jelly roll strips. Now, when I made this, I was tempted to make my 9 patch out of all of the same blocks. So I was tempted to do a 9 patch that looked like this. So I've just got 2 colours in that. And then I realised that actually that doesn't work. So cut all of your pieces, and then you can make your blocks using different pieces. So for example, I've got my dark in the centre and 2 lights on the outside there. Let's have a look, what else have I got? Actually, if I go with that, hold on a minute. If I go with this, so I've just got more variety, and then I go with that. So you can see there that I've made a checkerboard out of the fabrics, and I think it works better. And when you come to join these up, because in a moment we're going to be cutting them across on the diagonal, and when you come to join these up, you do need an assortment of colour. So I'd encourage you to do all of them first and then put them into piles that you're going to sew together to make your 9 patch. So I'm now going to go back to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew these together, and I'm going to line my seams up. So here you can see where we've pressed going the other way. I'm going to put my seams together like that, so we get a nice join and it looks even on the block. So now I'm going to set my seams again. So when we've done this, what we're going to do is we're going to square this up so it's exactly 6.5 inches. So you can do this with a square ruler, or you can just carefully go around the edges, making sure you're taking the same amount off on all the sides. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to cut your fabric. So for example, let me show you on here, this orange square here. So this is our checkerboard piece, and now we're going to cut our orange piece, and we're going to cut that into a 6.5 inch square. So we're going to take our highlight fabric, whether it's our orange or our cream, and we're going to lay it on top of the square like this, and we are going to draw a line diagonally across. And then we are going to machine 1/4 of an inch either side. And again, there's a lovely diagram in the book and it shows you how you're going to do that. So I'm just going to the machine and I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from the centre line. So I'm going to put the line of my 1/4 inch foot on the line that I've just drawn. And I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch on either side of the line. And then turn it round. I'm going to come back down the other way. So what I do, so the needle doesn't just disappear down the hole and tangle the thread, is I put this under there. I put the guide and the fabric right underneath so that I know that when the needle goes in, its first stitch is going to be in the fabric. And then what we're going to do is we are going to set our seam before we cut on the diagonal. So I'm just going to the iron to do that. And the reason you do this, and this is where you learn not to use an iron off pen, because I've just ironed off the mark. So a pencil would have been better. But I can work it out 1/4 of an inch either side of where I've sewn. The reason you set your seam is because we're going to cut across all our little squares, and sometimes you get a bit of movement when your fabric's on the bias, and we want to try and be as accurate as possible. So I've just lined, because I've ironed off my line, I have just lined my ruler up. So it's 1/4 of an inch on the sewn line, and I'm now going to cut corner to corner through the fabrics. So I haven't quite gone through that bit. You need to press quite hard, especially where you've got intersections of seams. I'll just snip that through there. So what you've now got are these pieces that look like this. So you've got these half square triangles. So again, lots of pressing here. We are going to set our seams and we're going to press these back. Set our seam, press it back. So I'll just show you the ones that I made earlier on. So I've done 4 of these. I'm just going to repress these again, and then I'm going to show you how we join those up, and that's going to create this centre. And so now what we're going to do to create this block, so you can see if we turn it that way, you've got a block on point. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay this out, and we need a light and a dark. And we need a light and a dark there. And I'm just hoping, oh yes, look at that, a light and a dark there. So that is going to be our block that looks like this. So I would recommend that you do it in 2 sections. So I'm going to join these 2 together, and then join all of it together. So I'm just going to the machine to do that. Now what I'm going to say is make sure that your seams are going in opposite directions and pin them before you start, because you want to be as accurate as possible with this, and you will get a little bit of movement on some of these. So I have just got to flip one seam, and I think that's just how I've put the pieces together, but I'm not going to get too worried about that. And what you could do when you've got it all together, if you feel it's a little bit bulky, once it's stitched together, you could use steam in your iron then. I wouldn't recommend using steam beforehand because, as I say, you do get some movement. So I'm just going to the machine, I'm going to sew these together. So I've actually pinned at every intersection of the seams, and now I'm going to join the two halves together. So we're going to set our seam again. I'm going to give this a really good press. Now at this point, if you wanted to add a bit of steam to flatten it, I think it would be okay because we've actually got it all together. So this is our block, this one here. So I'm literally just going to trim these ends now, where we've got these little corners. And there we have our centre block. Let's just cut those threads out the way a moment. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make these pieces. And what you need is you need another 9 patch, which has been trimmed with the orange. So we're going our opposite colour. We're now creating this part of our block. So you need a 9 patch that's been trimmed with orange. So I've already made one. I'm just going to the machine to make the second one because you need 2 of these. And again, we're going to cut them across and join them to our square here. And the book gives you all the measurements. These are 1.5 inches, but the book will give you all the measurements for all the pieces. I really like this orange grunge. It's called, what's it called? It's called Pumpkin. I love it. Now, ordinarily, I'd go to the iron to press these back, but I'm just going to finger press them for today so I can get the other pieces on. Now we're going to create these corner pieces which we're going to sew onto here. So what we need to do is we need to cut these in half. I don't know if you can see, I'll try and do it on the closer camera. And what we need to make sure is that we go right the way through the centre of our blocks. So I'm in the centre here, 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 not quite there. Come that way a little bit more. So I'm going through the centre of the blocks. And you need a good sharp blade in your rotary cutter because you're going to be cutting through some of these seams that have been joined up. Just do that again. Oh, actually, this one's better. This one's probably slightly more accurate. It's easier to get it through the centre lines. So straight the way through. And then what you're going to do is you are going to sew these on like this. So what is important is that you make sure that these points line up. So when you come to put it on, so let me just put it like this to show you how it's going to work, because we're working on point here. So that's going to be our other block. So what you need to do when you come to sew these on, let's see if I can show you on this one, you need to get the centre of here and the centre of here. I don't know if you can see that on that camera. So I'm talking about the centre point there and the centre point there. So you could fold this in half and just give it a little finger press there and make sure that that lines up with that seam and pop a pin in it. And then because this is now on the bias, you have got a bit of movement. So I would encourage you to use a lot of pins. Make sure you've got it nice and firm before you start sewing. I'm going to do the same at the other end. I'll sew those two together at the same time. And it's always worth pinning from the centre out rather than starting at one side and pinning across. You'll be more accurate if you start from the centre and work outwards to the ends. So I'm now just going to the machine. I'm going to sew those two. And again, we're going to set our seams. We're going to flip that back. What I'm going to do this time is I'm actually going to press that this way, because it will make it easier when I put the other two pieces on. There is quite a bit of bulk, but as I say, you can always give it a good steam afterwards. And now we're going to join our other two pieces on. So we're going to do exactly the same. And again, we're going to set the seam. Flip it back. And then we're just going to trim off these little ears. Now, some of them have gone in better than others, but it's not the end of the world. We can just give that a tiny little trim there. And there we have our block. So you can see I made the first one with the orange triangles, and I've made the second one with the cream triangles and the orange on the outside. So if you look at the quilt behind me, you can see how that's gone together. So we're just going to go over to the quilt and we'll talk a bit more about it. So you can see how the two blocks that I've just shown you, how they go together. So you have one block with your lime green, and then your next block is the white, or in my case this would be the orange and this would be the cream. And I think it looks really effective when you see it all put together. And it's 16 of those blocks, and I think it's really beautiful that it's got such a contrast between this lovely limey colour and the blacks and whites and greys. And what I really love about this is the back. I mean, look at that backing. Isn't that just fabulous? It's like newsprint on the back. I love it. and it's been long arm quilted, and it's got this lovely grey binding, which is a bit like the Macawa linen look, I would say, for the binding. And I think it's just a fabulous example of simple colours but with a pop of colour. So monochrome with a pop of colour, I think it's brilliant. And it's been long arm quilted absolutely beautifully with these lovely swirls which contrast to the geometric shapes. So I'd just like to say thank you to Pam and Nicky for loaning us this quilt. And I hope I've inspired you today to have a go at it. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. As always, have fun. I look forward to seeing you next time here in the sewing studio.